He'd adopted this lifestyle 30 years ago, when he left his home in West Virginia and arrived at West Point, and he saw no reason to change. It suited him well. But Jim had something else in common with Dugan, and now it was time to mention it. "Before we start, I want to make one thing clear," he said. "I can't give you back your old arms. That's beyond my abilities. But I'll tell you what I can do, Steve. I can give you something better." Private Dugan didn't respond, and neither did his father. That was the usual reaction. They thought he was bullshitting them, but they didn't want to call him a liar. "I see you're skeptical." Jim unbuttoned his shirt cuff. "But I'm going to prove it to you." Smiling again, he rolled up his right sleeve and revealed the inner workings of his own prosthetic arm. Jim had built half a dozen prostheses for himself, but he always used this particular model for his consultations. Its hand was covered with polyimide skin and looked just like his flesh and blood left hand, but everything from the wrist to the shoulder was exposed. All the wires and processors and actuators and hinges. It was the fruit of 10 years of research and labor, and Jim displayed it proudly.
"Holy Christmas," Henry whispered. "It's a prosthetic. I didn't even notice."
Steve stared at the thing bug-eyed.
"The hand looks so normal, and it moves normal. But the rest of it—"
His voice trailed off.
"It's like the arm in that movie," Henry said. "You know, the Terminator." So far, so good, Jim thought.
He wanted them to get excited about the prosthesis. "Let me tell you a little story. Back in 1998, while I was still in the service, I lost my right arm, and I got sent to Walter Reed just like you did. But when I went to get fitted for my prosthesis, you know what they gave me? A piece of wood, with leather straps on one end and a steel hook on the other, like the pirate in Peter Pan. That was the best the Army could do. It was the most advanced prosthesis they had." Steve shook his head in sympathy. "Well, I wasn't pleased," Jim continued, "so I decided to do something about it. After my discharge, I went to Pasadena, to the California Institute of Technology. You see, I'd majored in engineering when I was at West Point, and I'd learned a few things about communication systems when I worked in military intelligence. And I heard there was a professor at Caltech who had a company called Singularity that was developing a way to connect microchips to the human nervous system. So I went to this guy, Professor Arvin Conway, and said I wanted to work with him. I told him I was going to get my PhD and become an expert on prosthetics, and within 10 years I was going to build something better than the goddamn piece of wood the Army gave me." Jim raised his prosthetic arm and waved it around, demonstrating its full range of motion. The lubricated joints pivoted silently as he bent the wrist and elbow and shoulder. "And I succeeded. After 10 years, I started my own company and moved back here so I could custom build prostheses for the soldiers at Walter Reed. It's the best thing I've ever done in my life. Aside from raising my daughter, that is." Henry couldn't take his eyes off the arm.
"How much does it weigh, Mr. Pierce?"
"Just a couple of pounds more than an ordinary arm. I use lightweight, high-strength alloys for the joints and structural components, and I put in high-torque motors that efficiently convert the battery charge into mechanical energy. Here, let me show you." Jim got up from the table and went to the workbench that ran along the walls of his basement office. The bench held his machine tools, his lathe, vise, laser cutter, and 3D printer, as well as stacks of spare parts and circuit boards. He reached behind one of the stacks and picked up an incongruous item he'd placed there just before the Dugans arrived. It was a 15-ounce can of sliced peaches. Holding it in his prosthetic hand, he returned to the table. "Okay, I got some Del Monte peaches here packed in syrup," he said. "The can is made of aluminum and you can dent it pretty easily, but it's a lot harder to bust it open." Jim tossed the can in the air, then caught it. Then he wrapped his mechanical fingers around the can and crushed it. Yellowish syrup spurted out of a split seam in the aluminum. "Whoa!" Steve yelled.
Nice.
His father laughed.
Hey, you got syrup on my shirt.
Jim laughed too. Although he'd done this demonstration many times before, it never failed to amuse him. I busted the can, but I still can't get the peaches out. I need to make the hole a little bigger. He transferred the crushed and leaking can to his left hand and pointed his prosthesis at the thing as if he was going to punch it. But instead, he extended the retractable knife he'd built into the hand. With a loud click, the blade emerged.